Crisis Equestria, Chapter 27, Impropriety. Briarthorn wove his way through the streets of Hope's Point, 7 mares and 1 other stallion behind him avoiding all the pedestrian traffic they could. All 8 of them stared in curiosity and wonder at the city around them, which fully lived up to its name. At the entrance, there had been a very clear set of buildings, and stallions intended for easing wearied travelers in the city. Further in, the city itself unfolded into view. The streets weren't paved with gold, as they'd heard Utopia was, certainly, but this place was most definitely the highlight of their journey thus far. The city loomed around them, much larger than Rainbow Dash, who'd flown over just days before, had initially described it. At first glance, it was about the size of Canterlot, and certainly shared its most noticeable quality of being built into a cliff. Hope's Point differed enough from Pandemonium to make them rather glad they hadn't been traveling all this time to a smaller version of that city. No skyscrapers towered into the air, no massive factories choked the air with smog, and most notably, the beacon's veil was not obscured in the sky, which through the color of the force field actually looked quite pleasant. The crowded streets bustled with ponies of every kind, all of them looking quite content, even ecstatic, just to be within the safety of the port town. Businesses flourished, the streets were clean, and every pony wore bright smiles. For the first time in weeks, the 6 mares from Ponyville almost felt like they were at home. The second thought on their minds was their new tour guide, Briarthorn, whose bizarre way of speaking and peculiar mannerisms kept the group on its hooves, not wanting to miss anything.
Now I hope it's immediately obvious that Hope's Point isn't just Hope's Port. We're full-on Metroplexopolis.
Briarthorn expounded airily as he walked them past row after row of clearly personally touched buildings, from houses to apartments, and small corner stores to large grocery marts. He flapped each of his wings independently at the particularly impressive ones, while simultaneously gracing his tour group with a pleasant breeze.
We don't have much in the way of what you might call a standard civic structural cohesion.
He rolled his eyes in thought.
But that's because we're, to be frank, as completely autonomous as a city can be. The city's, how should I put this, founder? Sure, the founder declared us a sovereign nation. City-state all the way.
To make his long story short, they're completely independent of Pandemonium, TikTok interjected.
That doesn't seem possible,
Flathoof observed, doubt tingling in his voice.
How do you deal with the new Pandemonium armed forces? They were established specifically for the purpose of ensuring no other civilizations existed on the northern continent. Got a whole air force and army and everything to handle folks like you. I've been curious about it ever since I first heard of this place.
Briarthorn gave a boastful wave of his hoof.
We're just that good. Have been for 2 whole generations, ever since this place got started up. The original ponies who lived here nominated the founder as their king, and he passed down the mantle to his son, who passed it along to his daughter, who is our current queen. All of them. The best of the best of the best class of ponies. I wasn't completely letter-smacking my boss when I was giving her derivatives of a royal. That's for sure. She is the queen, and that's an attractive thing about her.
He noticed a few of them giving him awkward looks.
Hey, don't arch every lovely eyebrow so quickly, ladies. And gentle colt, I'm not just thinking about the junk she's got rummaged in her trunk. I mean, yes. Personally, she is a beauty. a doll, a gem, but she is the ruler of an independent place in a really dependent world. She is really a queen, and here the queen of everything. Every pony around here knows her, loves her, and frankly I can't blame them. Wonderful mare she is. I think the NPAF is actually scared of her, you know? Yeah.
She certainly sounds fascinating. I'd love a chance to meet such a splendid pony. I may not be good, Mr. Lockwood, but I understand the importance of making social connections with the right ponies in the right places, and having a queen on your list of friends must certainly be quite a perk. Why, Twilight here is proof enough of that. Thanks to her, we're not unaccustomed to being in the presence of royalty, are we, girls? Asked Rarity. Well, I don't know. Meeting the queen of a foreign nation on a new continent sounds like it would be different from having a conversation with any of the princesses, said Fluttershy. Oh, nonsense. I'm certain we'd handle ourselves marvelously if given the opportunity. Just a little class and dignity, and as long as you all let me do the talking, we'll be sitting pretty in no time. Something tells me the queen here ain't o' the fancy persuasion, Applejack said bluntly. Briarthorn continued his spiel, waving his wings around broadly to gesture to the ponies walking to and fro around them.
Ponies here have come from both Pandemonium and Utopia, but both for very different reasons. Most Pandemonium ponies come here to either escape the city's problems, or to strike out a nice little life of profit and comfort. From Utopia, either we have ponies coming out here to help the needy here and in Pandemonium proper, bless their precious bleeding hearts, or they're the adventurous type and want to have an enjoyable vacation. My dearest little queenie, pardon, Her Royal Highness, she can give them that. A veritable steamy mixy gumbo of ponies from all walks of life. We have your business centers, your residential neighborhoods, your seedy underbelly. Don't worry, all perfectly harmless.
This place is sounding more and more like Canterlot all the time. Canterlot might be a ritzy place all around, but heck if I haven't seen all sorts of ponies there. Not just the fancy schmancy types Rarity hangs out with. Wonderbolts might be high-class flyers and everything, but most of them used to be real middle-class folk before making it big. I'd like to think becoming famous didn't change any of them. The ones I've met seem pretty normal. Ooh. Pinky chimed in. Her voice was clear, as her helmet had been removed and strapped to her side. I know a few ponies in Canterlot that love my kind of parties, too. Not just those high-class ritzy ballroom shindigs. It certainly doesn't look like Canterlot, to be sure. Canterlot's architecture, while certainly profound and beautiful, is rather uniform. These buildings are all much more custom-styled, as 'twere. And just look at all of these ponies. So many of them are so colorful and bright. Not at all the common drab shades we saw back in the city amongst the general populace. Why, even dear Lockwood's coat color is quite common. I do see a few of those types here and there, but even then, they're wearing such colorful clothing. I don't get it, though. Why is everybody still wearing clothes out here? I thought that law was all Pandemonium's hogwash.
If you're trying to get me to take my clothes off Southern Comfort, you just need to ask.
Applejack rolled her eyes in response.
Well, at any rate, we're all just used to it, I guess. There's no law saying you have to wear clothes. The Queen basically gives us all a free pass to do what we want here, so long as we're not hurting any pony. We do get a few ponies here and there that choose to go stalk through the streets, of course. It's just not well received. I certainly don't mind, but by the stars and skies above us, some ponies just do not have the figure for it. Now, if a few of you were to take that option...
Rarity brightened, not paying attention to Briarthorn's last sentence. Oh, they do actually have some semblance of fashion sense. So many bland clothes back in the city. You haven't any idea how difficult it was to whip up unique outfits for us all. Oh my, I'm awfully embarrassed to be wearing my dress in such shoddy condition. Briarthorn sidled over to Rarity with a slight spring in his step.
Madam Rarity, I didn't say a word about your clothing, and I like a good suit, sweet, because what you've got could have been a conscious choice. You're a bold lady, if I might be so bold myself. Because you're bold, I said to myself, she must know it's got just the right kind of wrong to it.
As he spoke, his smile widened.
When ripped, it shows off that gorgeous figure of yours. Or rather, the figure I know you've got once you get a mind for good and a meal just as good back in you. You could, no, should be one of this cruddy little town's top-of-the-tip models, with a figure like the one I've got in my head, and the one you'll have tomorrow.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. I suppose it was a compliment, of course. Ah, yes. Well, I'm used to hearing that sort of thing. I can't say that the thought never crossed my mind, but my calling is making dresses, not necessarily wearing them. Briarthorn wiggled his eyebrows at her last words. She gave an annoyed sigh. What I mean is, making dresses is my passion. I have little interest in modeling them. Oh, who do you think you're trying to fool, Rarity? You know dang well that if you were able to get your hoof in the door with that whole modeling business, you'd jump right into the opportunity. Rarity rolled her eyes. I'm going to assume that too was a compliment about my figure, Applejack, and I appreciate it. I must say that I'm touched and a little surprised, frankly, that you agree with Mr. Briarthorn.
Oh, please, madam, lady, dare I say mistress. For you, Rarity, no need for the Mr. moniker.
Briarthorn insisted as he stopped walking. He took up her hoof and patted it gently. Yes, well, how much longer until we get to this food joint anyway? Rainbow interrupted. Could we just keep moving and not waste time schmoozing? Briarthorn turned towards Rainbow Dash, narrowing his eyes with mild disappointment.
My apologies, Miss Dash. We're almost back to normal, but I just can't dismiss the parts of you that aren't going to be fixed with food or fabric.
He flapped one wing a few times, motioning for the rest of the group to follow.
When I saw you, I wasn't just thinking opportunity for hay rolls.
He continued in an almost solemn voice.
You've been out in the wastes. That's serious stuff, right? So would you rather me harp on about your troubles?
Well, no, not really. We've had enough of talking about the crap we've been through, Rainbow agreed. Briarthorn nodded gently.
That's the typical thing, isn't it? What a therapist might call consolidation. But it keeps all of you back out there in your heads, doesn't it? So my instinct pulls me away from that. Therapy is for when you've got the mind to reflect at all. Do you all prefer when a stallion ignores the good in you after so much bad? I'm just pointing out what I like about you all.
He smiled openly again.
Does it bother you so much that the pony who let you into his home would want a little time to stop and get to what problems I can handle for you? I've put aside my plans for tonight if you're interested.
Is that a trick question? Rainbow's wings ruffled. Because honestly, I'd rather eat than have to spend any more time with you. Briarthorn inhaled sharply, but his wily look didn't falter.
Oh, ouch, my double apologies. My instincts aren't always great, are they? Not for every pony. Some exclusions apply. Consult your doctor before using.
He raised one eyebrow.
Be assured, my dear, lithe and lovely,
he said, watching her bristle at his words.
Rainbow Dash, food is your imminent future. You'll have to tolerate me for just another block, or 2, or 3, or 4. Can't remember. We'll be able to see it. No. If you ask me, well, I know by now at least a few of you will, so I'm just going to provide the answer for you. Buns and Stuff is the single best restaurant in the city. Immensely popular. Lines stretching out the door from business hour open to business hour close. But Lockwood knows the owner and introduced me some years back. You give me 2 shakes of any of your tails, metaphorically, for now, and I'll get us a table lickety-split. No muss, no fuss. The things that mare does with dollar foods.
Mwah! He kissed his wingtips and waved the kiss into the open air.
It's not surprising the place is packed all the time.
He suddenly had a pained expression, the first the group had seen.
Well, okay, hold on. Let's not set ourselves on the future so hard it hurts. I don't want to make you hunger worse, ladies. And Buff Guy.
Oh no, more dollar junk? Applejack groaned. Frankly, at this point I'd eat anything, but I was hoping for some real food. Them rations we all took with us weren't all that filling.
Hey, hold on now. If you're groaning for homegrown, she's got real stuff too. Naturally, I think. But,
Briarthorn said with a flick of both his right hoof and wing.
But outside of the really ritzy joints back in Pandemonium, you can't find some of the more delectable dollar brands that we, in our humble little hamlet, somehow have in ample supply.
So then why do you only give the crummy brown stuff at the gate, huh? If you got all the sweet score in here, why not pass it out a little more generously at the gate? Briarthorn didn't miss a beat.
If we gave all the good loot out at the door, why would any pony want to come in and stay?
Surprisingly logical. Every pony knows this city has the goods, but getting in is the tricky part. I hear you all are still worried about saboteurs, even after all these years, said Tick-Tock.
Without a shadow of a doubt. It's only gotten worse in the past week or so.
Briarthorn's face scrunched up as if a foul smell had suddenly wafted into his nose.
We've had a lot of ponies come looking to get in the standard way. A lot more than normal, and half of them were immediately suspicious. They never have a voucher, they never have a story that corroborates under those background checks, and they've never, and I mean not once, avoided our turning up dirt that they were with New Pandemonium armed forces in some way, shape, or form. That hellscape's military is under no circumstances whatsoever, ever allowed into the city.
whether they currently work for them, or used to, or are aspiring to, or whatever. It's not hard to figure out why. Anything goes wrong with the shield, and the whole city is open to attack. And you can be damn sure Pandemonium would try to reclaim us. Police aren't a big problem. They don't get along well with the NPAF to be in cahoots, but we're still even more diligent on cops, of course, than we are with regular folk. Never can be too careful.
Flathoof looked a little nervous.
Cops? Do you get much of the NPPD out here?
Briarthorn eyed Flathoof for a moment, letting his eyes drift down to the red stallion's cutie mark. He stopped walking, and the whole group stopped behind him. His voice turned slightly cold.
Cops usually aren't that dumb. They're paramilitary. They're not troops. They're detectives at best. Agents. But we've had a few, and you know what? Bah, the Queen hates them. I think she might hate them more than the actual military. They trade secrets, not missiles. We've only had a few, but I will guarantee you this. If a cop comes into Hope's Point, he's not going back to New Pandemonium. Nice set of hoof cuffs on that swole flank of yours, big guy. You wouldn't happen to know any cops, would you?
Flathoof began to sweat, and was about to open his mouth to speak when TikTok opened hers first.
This big bloke? Oh, sure, he knows plenty of cops.
TikTok?
Briarthorn cracked his neck, preparing to reach into one of his pockets.
Does he now?
TikTok continued, her expression not even remotely nervous.
Oh, but not for what you think, so you can relax. Old Flathoof here is a career criminal.
Always doing porridge, this big hench bloke. Briarthorn raised an eyebrow.
Hench?
Beefy. He's strong, right? But he's a little slow, if you follow. In the head sometimes. You must have picked up on it. Can't imagine what Lockwood sees in him.
Are we going to keep making that accusation all day? How many times do I have to deny it?
Briarthorn stared at them for a bit, then dropped his hoof. He smiled again.
I trust Lockwood's judgment. Wouldn't vouch for you if I didn't. And criminals, well, we get plenty of that type round here. Just know, Hinch, dude, that while we don't mind a pony rough around the edges, there are some kinds of law-breaking the Queen isn't going to tolerate. Her Majesty likes her city clean, not just of your average litter, but pony trash as well. So what got you that nice sizable permanent record, huh? Must have been a lot if getting arrested is your particular skill.
Flathoof's eyes darted back and forth, and he quickly answered.
Oh, just some small-time stuff. Looting mostly. Petty theft. Pandemonium's pretty lenient on that kind of stuff. And the pokey one night, out of the next. Yahoo! I made more money stealing, getting caught, and paying my way out than most ponies did with real jobs. Beating the system, I say.
TikTok rolled her eyes.
See? Just a bunch of stupid stuff. Flinching tallies and whatnot. Nothing serious.
Briarthorn smiled and continued to walk. The group followed, trying not to sigh with relief, all at once.
Larceny and bribery. Now that's just a fun time, isn't it? Useful tools for your toolbox. Just don't fall back into your grabby habits around here, buff guy. We want to keep things nice and easy for your stay. A bribe or two, that's just common courtesy, really. Always room for that no matter where you go. I've already had to bribe, what was it, 3 ponies today? One of them was the Queen herself, too. And hey, it's not even always money. Sometimes it's a little charm and good looks, which I know you all know I've got.
He grinned, ignoring several looks of incredulity, and a look of clear distaste from Flathoof.
Sometimes it favors. Hell, what do you think Lockwood's done all his life?
Flathoof coughed and gave TikTok a very brief look of gratitude.
Yes, well, I can see why you'd want to keep certain ponies out if you want to keep this place safe. Don't worry about me. I put that life behind me. So, does the NPAF often try to attack the city? Does about twice a month, sending an air carrier this way to scaremonger every pony count as often. A literal physical reminder for us that if one little thing goes wrong, the city's as good as dust, and if we're lucky, we're rotting in prison a little while before being inevitably tossed into the blood mire. Again, if you're lucky, you're already dead at that point. Let's take a look-see.
Briarthorn casually took a small, complicated-looking device, covered in buttons and knobs, out of one of his many pockets, and looked at it intently for a moment.
Well, if the guys doing the mapping aren't being idiots, and most of the time they do a pretty good job, we can expect a fireworks show before the week is out. Missiles, magic blasts, bullets, acidic flak sprays, the works. Great fun. Bring the whole family out to watch. Nice even progression up to a final act. Gotta love that fancy AMRG 22000. Makes a real nice spectacle. Real shame for them it doesn't work on the shield. When the big guns come a-knockin', I think the guys working the street sweet berths actually do better. Now me, I like being, say, a mile up, just behind the shield, on the off chance they can see me blowing a raspberry. Really, they've been extremely obvious that they're going for random attacks. Ooh, scary.
He mocked, waving his wings and hooves in fake ominosity.
But please, the city's gotta file their crap in triplicate just to order some pony to sneeze, so we've kind of picked up on the pattern. The Queen likes to organize little banners and junk to put up when we know they're coming, just for a laugh. She only makes good guesses. I figure there'll be flyers out by, say, tomorrow? Usually a day or two before the attack, by the latest.
End of the week? Goodness, that sounds dangerous,
Rarity nervously pointed out.
Wouldn't the attack ships pursue any pony trying to leave? How horrid!
Briarthorn turned and pat her hoof reassuringly, with an accidental brush of his wing along her side in the process.
Oh, my lady, trust me, they do. That's why we've got the best ships and pilots in the world here. All custom-built and self-trained, respectively. Better than anything the dumb military can offer.
He spread his wings and gave a sharp salute. One of his wings again brushed along Rarity's back. He stayed frozen for a half-second in the perfect pose of a precision pilot.
If you're worried about ships making dangerous gaps in our big ol' snow globe's force field, don't be. Our ships don't even use the shield for any of our countermeasures. Their ships never even dented it. I can assure you, personally, Lady Madam Rarity, that even if the attack is scary, no cruel fate will befall you, or your lovely companions. Or Lockwood. Or your big guy.
He added with another perfect bow, tucking in his wings so quickly Rarity was late in feeling offended as it brushed her flank a third time. They followed him around another corner, and as Briarthorn had said, they could now clearly see their destination. It was a modest-sized building colored with bright pink and blue stripes. The awnings looked like white, fluffy frosting that had been applied with meticulous care. The windows were spaced evenly around the building, their frames lavishly decorated to look like graham crackers. The roof was also decorated with the same frosting-like material as the awnings, and was topped with a candle, itself topped with a bright glowing light that illuminated the streets below with a bright pink hue. It resembled a freshly baked chocolate birthday cheesecake.
Oh, wow!
Pinky gasped,
This place reminds me of Sugar Cube Corner. It looks delicious. I bet I could eat the whole place all by myself, plumbing and all.
She gave a long, drawn-out lick of her lips in anticipation.
It certainly does have that air to it, doesn't it?
Rarity observed.
And so crowded. And in the early afternoon like this? Late afternoon,
TikTok clarified.
Just nearing supper time. Actually, it seems we arrived at precisely the right time.
Or wrong time if we ever want to get in, Applejack muttered. Buns and stuff was, as Briarthorn had said, incredibly popular. A long line stretched out the door all the way around the building's edge and circled back around the other side, switching directions back and forth several times whenever it met itself. The entrance was the only part of the exterior not blocked by the ever-growing line, and it came completely with what looked like an actual, honest-to-goodness bouncer outside the door. He was a dark green earth pony stallion, certainly bigger all around than even Flathoof. He wore a black suit and tie and a pair of sunglasses, despite there being no sun to shade his eyes from. His brown mane was incredibly short, and his tail tied up so that it was neatly tucked behind him. As they approached, he lifted a hoof to stop them.
"Hold on, kids,"
he said in a gruff voice.
"What do you think you're doing? Can't you see the line? To the end of it, all of you."
Briarthorn skipped forward. The other stallion's mouth curled into a disdainful frown as soon as the Pegasus approached.
Hey, Ironheart, good to see you."
The other stallion snorted. "I thought I told you weren't allowed back here until you paid your tab. You damn near put the boss out of business last time you came in." Briarthorn looked genuinely shocked.
"What? Me? Of all ponies?"
He shrugged.
"Yeah, okay, I ran up a pretty meaty tab, but every pony in the city heard about that little shindig. And look at this place now. Out of business, my glorious golden ass. You guys must have easily done an extra 20% minimum from the raw amount of business during and after that half the city get-together that you had before. Come on. Come on. Who's your buddy?"
"I don't care if we outright doubled our profits, Ace. I'm not letting you back inside until you pay your tab. Rules are rules, and right now I'm the law here. You got a problem with it? Take your business elsewhere. I won't miss you."
"We can always go someplace else if this is a problem,"
TikTok grumbled, except she didn't because I voice her like a soulless automaton. Briarthorn blinked, honestly astonished for a moment.
"We could, but you all just suffered what's been certain death for too many ponies. As far as I'm concerned, this place is the Ritz, and you should get the Ritz."
Briarthorn rubbed his forehead with a wingtip.
"Mr. Nice Guy nearly dies getting you here, and I don't think he entrusted me to just take you all to some pony's hot pretzel stand. No, you give me a moment to think. I owe Lockwood at least that much."
Briarthorn tapped his chin and paced for a moment, murmuring half-formed words in the back of his throat as he went. There was a look of real distress in his expression. Then his wings flared as if something had struck him. He turned his head, narrowed his eyes, gave a sly smile, and approached the large bouncer stallion again.
"Okay, my tab, I'll settle it. Fine, just let me talk to your boss, yeah? Let me sort this out directly. I didn't know she was so gung-ho about kicking me, of all ponies, out for a tab. Delay. I thought she was joking. A real kidder, you know."
The stallion just gave him a stern look and didn't budge. Briarthorn reached into his pockets to pull out a large golden bit, which he flicked to the earth pony.
"There, happy? I still gotta see your boss. I'm looking for immediate reservations here. Very hush-hush. Just between me and her. Comprende?"
The stallion looked at the bit, and cautiously placed it between his teeth. Pocketing it, he opened the rope behind him and let Briarthorn through. Rainbow, who had pushed herself to the front of the group, attempted to follow, but was quickly barred by the earth pony's hoof. Lady. He can go through, but no pony else gets in so easy. When he's done talking to the boss, we'll see about the rest of you. Otherwise, get to the back of the line.
Oh, come on,
Rainbow sputtered.
Sweet Celestia, I'm getting sick of not being let into places. This is some cruel joke, it has to be. Oh, stop asking questions, let me in. I forgot my keys.
Ironheart just stared at her, with one eyebrow raised. She gave a nervous shrug.
Well, worth a shot.
Briarthorn turned and gave a reassuring salute with his wings. One out, one bent to his forehead.
Now, don't sweat it, my fine line of lovely ladies. And dude,
he added with a shrug to Flathoof,
I'll be back in, 20 seconds, maybe 30. I'll work this out and we'll be in business in no time, you'll see. Lockwood's not the only pony capable of having a smidge of resourcefulness around here, but boy does he give good lessons on the subject. Let's let the student apply some of the master's technique. Be right back, girls. And dude.
Briarthorn entered the building, leaving the 7 mares and Flathoof behind to sit and wait outside the establishment. So they waited, taking the opportunity to observe the city without having to listen to Briarthorn's motor mouth. That was one thing they hadn't noticed about the city before. The sounds. Ponies here were actually talking with one another, just like they would back at home in Ponyville. In Pandemonium, they rarely saw the 2 ponies even look at one another while walking through the streets, apart from yelling at one another for being in the way, of course. Here, every pony seemed to be part of a real community. More and more, it was reminding them of home, and how much they wanted to be back. A moment later, and Briarthorn exited the door and waltzed over to the group with a massive smile, not at all attempting to hide any sense of smugness. He gave Ironheart a small note, which the other stallion hesitantly took and began to read. Ironheart rolled his eyes after finishing the note and releasing the rope behind him again, gesturing for them to enter. Briarthorn gathered the others together and ushered them to follow, his smile widening by the second as he opened the door and waved them into the establishment, one at a time. Buns and Stuff certainly was impressive on the inside. Like the outside, it was decorated to look like various desserts. The walls were painted in very bright, colorful stripes that gradually faded from one color to another as they circled around the room, starting near the door with pink and blue, then going around into white and green, brown and yellow, black and red, and back around to pink and blue. The building was filled with tables that seated a very large variety of ponies of all shapes and sizes and breeds, all dressed in fine dress attire of every color and style they could imagine. Waiters and waitresses circled the room with trays of food that they delivered to tables, and the sight of anything at all on a plate made the group's mouths water. Earth ponies worked on carrying out the large trays and placing them out on the tables. Unicorns took orders and jot them down on notepads, and Pegasi circled the air with pitchers of drinks, sets of napkins, and silverware, or dirty plates to ensure fast service. Following Briarthorn, they left the doorway and headed along a hall that was prominently decorated with a rug that almost looked like frosting. They came to a large, rectangular dining room, big enough to easily fit a few dozen ponies comfortably. It was completely empty, and other than the single, very large dining table in the center that had been decorated and prepared to seat 10, all the tables were lined up to lean against the room's walls. Staff members were busily setting up equipment on the main table, plates, utensils, glasses, napkins, etc. One staff member in particular, a unicorn stallion with a blue coat and darker blue mane, tail, and finely trimmed mustache, hurried over to them just as they entered the room, and without a single word ushered them over to the table so they could begin taking their seats. He, Flathoof, and Briarthorn helped the mares into their seats, the latter of which making very open decisions about where every pony was sitting, particularly that he got to sit next to Rarity at one head of the table. All seated at last, the group took the opportunity to look around the room they'd been seated in. Wonder and awe spread across their faces, as this dining room was specifically decorated to look easily fancier than anything the rest of the restaurant had to offer. The ceiling was domed and white, with a bright chandelier in the center. The walls were painted a light golden brown, broken up by randomly placed splotches of richer, darker brown, applied in intentionally not quite perfect circles.
Oh wow, the walls look like cookies,
Pinky cooed, licking her lips.
Chocolate chip my favorite. Must resist urge to eat walls.
Even Rarity was impressed.
I must say this decor is simply splendid. It reminds me of this one sweet shop I visited whilst in the company of Fancy Pants. Very elaborate, very tasteful. Tasty looking too, I might add.
Speaking of tasteful and tasted looking, where's the dang grub?
Applejack impatiently huffed.
I'm sitting here starving and y'all brought us to some ritzy joint where we gotta sit around with salad forks or what have you. Shoot, a dang hay fry stand would have been better choice. Fast, fresh, and easy.
Easy, little Miss Southern Comfort.
Briarthorn laughed.
I just got finished guaranteeing that the lovely owner of this fine establishment would set us up with a feast fit for royalty. Those kinds of halls divorce might take just a moment, but if you keep the faith and stick with the trusting me despite my reprehensible manners, you will not be disappointed. Considering all that spiel I gave that dear young filly, I'd expect to be getting everything in, say, 3 minutes.
About 4 minutes later, the double doors into the dining room burst open, and a half-dozen ponies carried into the room the grandest plethora of foodstuffs the party had ever seen. Everything was carefully spread out on the table in front of them. The only thing keeping them from gorging everything right then and there were the lightly glimmering barriers of magic, keeping the heaping piles of food steady on the platters and trays as they were set up. What really astounded them was what was available. They could see what certainly looked like real food at first glance on all of the plates. Bowls of strawberries and whipped cream, trays of sliced carrots, bananas, and squash, plates loaded with assorted types of melons, and at the center of the display, a big platter completely covered with flowers of every kind, from daffodils to violets. The one thing that seemed odd about it all was that every single piece of food glistened as if it were perfectly fresh, perhaps even polished, including the flowers. A dark gray unicorn with a short, straight, pure white mane and tail, with a matching curly mustache, stood at the doorway. He wore a very prim and proper black tuxedo and tie, and a tiny silver monocle upon his right eye. He diligently watched a tiny stopwatch on a chain connected to its tuxedo pocket, while his horn glowed with the same color as the magical barriers. Rainbow, Applejack, and Pinky all eyed him with a little disdain, as he was now the only thing keeping them from their food. As soon as the last tray of food had been laid out, he nodded in approval and clicked the watch, causing the other staff members to all collectively breathe sighs of relief. The old unicorn coughed into his hoof, bowing deeply to the ponies all present. "Honored guests," he announced proudly, with an accent similar to TikTok's, "it is my humble honor to present our esteemed restaurateur, Lady Cookie Dough." Behind him stepped an earth pony mare, her coat the same color as the walls of the room, her creamy white mane lofted into a neat little spiral, resembling a tuft of whipped cream, with streaks of very light golden brown running through it. Her figure pushed slightly against the fabric of her dull green frilly lace shirt and skirt. Her cutie mark, a pair of cookies, one of them half eaten, could be seen clearly on her flank. Her smile widened as she looked out amongst the crowd of hungry ponies, then turned to a colossal frown when she saw the one empty seat at the end of the table, opposite one golden Pegasus. Cookie Dough immediately turned to Briarthorn and stalked towards him in a huff, her eyes alight with anger.
Briarthorn, you lout!
She flustered with a pout.
You said Her Majesty was coming, so where is she? I swear if I've gone through all this trouble...
Briarthorn waved her off dismissively.
Cookie, sweet honey, candy dear. Just be patient, she'll be here.
He muttered under his breath.
Eventually.
He cleared his throat and continued.
You didn't think you'd see Her Royal Grace without a nice little entourage, though, did you?
Exactly!
She exclaimed, stamping her hooves.
Where are they? They're always here before she is, just to scope the place out like good bodyguards do. I know these ponies ain't them, so where...
Cookie, baby, lovely, my heart, my joy. These are some very important guests of Her Majesty's, and they've had a very hard journey that has left them without anything even resembling food for quite a long time, as you can clearly see.
He gestured with a wing out to the group, who were all still hungrily eyeing the food that was before them, but still kept out of reach by shields. A few of the mares were visibly resisting the urge to try and break the magical fields by force, most notably Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie, the latter of whom was reaching her hoofs slowly along her back towards her rifle. Cookie Dough gulped and took a noticeable step in the direction of the door. Briarthorn brought a nervous Cookie Dough's attention back to himself.
They haven't eaten in many a day, so what can we do for them? Well, Her Majesty is being quite generous, see? I've got it on some most excellent authority to show them around our most excellent little town, and get them something most excellent to eat. So where do we go? Right here, my illustrious madam, to the best restaurant on the planet, of course. The Queen, will be joining us shortly. You know how the Queen is. She's a very, very, very busy Mary, so you never know when she might show up. But we're all in the square. Those clearance codes for her account, they checked out, right? You can just throw this little feasty on right here with no worries. And hey, insurance! If she does feel that my choices were a bit extravagant, well, I'll take that fall for you. I fall a whole lot, you know.
Cookie eyed him warily, then shrugged and turned to the rest of the ponies in the group.
Please, honored guests, forgive the delay. As owner and proprietor of Buns and Stuff, I welcome you all to...
Ugh, can we just eat already?
Rainbow Dash exclaimed, her patience finally having worn too thin as she prodded and poked the shield nearest to her. Cookie wrinkled her nose at the interruption, and stomped one hoof loudly.
Well, if you're all that eager to dig in, then please don't let me stop you, Hot Cocoa.
The unicorn nodded.
Yes, my lady?
It's feast time!
Of course, my lady,
he said as he nodded again. The fields of magic dropped, and in a flash the food was set upon with unmatched ferocity by Applejack, Rainbow Dash, and Pinkie Pie. Flathoof was not far behind, but at least paid some heed to proper table manners. Rarity and Fluttershy were much less active, and took their time, though even they were moving much quicker than they otherwise would. Tick-Tock was diligently helping Twilight in eating, taking her time between bites to give the other unicorn some as well. Briarthorn, however, leaned back from his own place at the table, shrugged at Cookie Dough, and gave her a look of genuinely impressed surprise as he slowly waved his wing in a gesture over the feast. There was more than enough food here to feed 20 ponies twice over, and it was being devoured without a single care in the world. Cookie watched it all in dismay.
My feast! They're just gorging themselves! They don't care a lick about how anything tastes!
Briarthorn chuckled.
Did you think that I was spinning another of my majestic and well-received half-truths when I said they hadn't eaten in days? Hunger does some crazy things to ponies. If I were you, Cookie, Pumpkin, I would be going to start up the next course. These mares and Buff Dude are going to be through everything here like...
He flicked a wing so fast it audibly cracked in the air.
That. At this rate, anyway. Maybe they'll appreciate the flavors more when they've had a couple dozen more of them.
She glared at him.
You? Ugh. I'd be insulted if at least some of them didn't look like they were enjoying themselves.
She turned to Rarity, who was seated next to Briarthorn in a clear position of importance. That, and she was much more likely to answer questions than Pinkie Pie, who was on Briarthorn's opposite, since she, at least, wasn't stuffing her face with mouthfuls of food at the time.
Miss, I don't believe I caught any of your names. Dreadfully sorry, dears. But this was all sort of rushed.
Rarity daintily wiped a napkin across her lips.
Oh, heavens, think nothing of it, lady. Cookie Dough, was it? Begging your pardon, but we should have introduced ourselves first. I am Rarity, and these are my friends.
She started gesturing around the table clockwise, starting from her left.
First, my dearest friend, Fluttershy. Oh, hello.
The Pegasus answered with a nod.
This food is really good, Lady Cookie Dough. Thank you so much for all of it.
She smiled as Alphanim's glowing orb circled around her happily.
Oh, and this is my spirit companion, Alphanim. He doesn't need anything, but he thanks you for feeding me too. That's sweet, Alphanim. You're such a good boy.
Oh, aren't you cute? Charmed, my dear.
Cookie blinked for a moment at the ball of light, but then shrugged, smiling as the orb bounced over and around her like an excited pet.
Go on, Rarity.
Rarity gestured to the next 2 seats.
Those are Tick-Tock and Twilight Sparkle. A pleasure, Lady Cookie Dough.
Tick-Tock waved.
Please, you can all drop the whole lady thing. That's just hot cocoa putting on airs. We were supposed to be having Her Highness here, weren't we, Coco?
Yes, madam, the old unicorn said drearily. Tick-Tock pointed her spoon at one of the items on her plate, a strawberry-shaped thing with what looked like whipped cream on top.
This is really fantastic stuff. Is there dull or white in any of this?
Cookie brightened immensely.
Why, yes. Yes, there is. You have a taste for it, do you?
Tick-Tock nodded.
When you don't get much of the stuff, yeah, you tend to notice it.
Cookie smiled politely as she looked at Twilight, who was busy taking another spoonful of food from Tick-Tock. She coughed quietly into her hoof, making Twilight realize she hadn't responded.
Oh. Sorry, Miss Cookie Dough. My mind was elsewhere. Thank you for all the food. It tastes wonderful. Forgive Twilight for not responding,
Rarity added politely.
She's had a bit of a problem with her magic lately, and it's affecting her physically too. She's a little exhausted. Okay, maybe a lot exhausted.
Oh, poor dear. She's lucky to have friends like you who are willing to help feed her in her time of need.
Cookie sniffed.
Well, don't worry. Dollar White has excellent nutritional properties for both magical and physical healing. She'll be right as rain in no time.
I certainly hope so.
Rarity nodded. She continued.
Just next to them is Flathoof.
He quickly swallowed his mouthful and nodded politely.
A pleasure, Miss Cookie Dough.
Oh my, such manners. You must be a real lady's colt out in the world.
Cookie said with a smile. She turned to the next 3 seats and frowned.
At least some of you have them.
Rarity nervously coughed.
Yes, well, those would be Applejack.
Applejack, like Flathoof, hastily swallowed her mouthful and nodded.
Thank you kindly for all this food, ma'am. Sorry about my table manners, but I'm mighty hungry. Like Briarthorn said, it's been dang near a whole week without a bite.
Well, at least you're polite, if a bit messy.
Cookie smiled.
Don't fret over it, dear. There's more than enough for every pony. Don't let me stop you.
Rarity continued.
Next to her is Rainbow Dash.
Rainbow waved a hoof from her plate.
Yo!
And Pinkie Pie.
Pinkie mimicked Rainbow's wave.
Heya!
Such a colorful group.
Cookie said with an uncomfortable laugh.
We get that response quite often, truth be told.
Rarity smiled. Cookie cleared her throat and trotted over to join Hot Cocoa by the door.
Well then, since you all seem to be nearly done with the appetizers, we'll just go and prepare the first course, shall we?
Every pony's eyes widened except Briarthorn, who merely watched in amusement.
Appetizers? First course?
Flathoof blurted.
You mean there's more food coming?
Well, of course.
Cookie chuckled.
I was told to prepare a feast, and a feast I did prepare. I've prepared enough food to feed 20 ponies, plenty. But seeing the way you 8 have just gone through the appetizers alone, I think I made it make sure the second course is up to snuff.
Quaffle quaff!
Rainbow happily exclaimed through a mouthful of food.
Oh, this is awesome! Yeah! Thanks a bunch!
Pinkie happily waved between licks of her plate.
This is some grade A stuff! I'm gonna have to get your recipes for some of it, even if I can't make it without that weird dollar stuff.
You mean you all like it?
Cookie blushed a little and waved a hoof.
Oh, yes, of course you do. I can see you stuffing your cute little faces. I'll be back shortly with more, so don't go anywhere.
She hurriedly ushered Hot Cocoa out of the room with her, leaving just a scant staff of 2 unicorns in the dining chamber in her wake. Minutes passed as more and more food was scarfed down by the group, and soon the table began to look quite empty. By now, Twilight's energy was returning to her, and she was able to start using her magic again. Though, after a single attempt at maneuvering a spoonful of food into her own mouth, and instead ending up with pink goop all over her nose, she decided to leave it to TikTok. At least now, though, she was able to participate in the conversations going around the table. The other unicorn's attention was, in the meantime, focused on the 2 unicorns that had been left behind, who were busily teleporting plates away to be cleaned and replaced. She watched them with a dejected frown and sighed.
It seems that just about every other bleeding unicorn can teleport nowadays except me,
she said despondently.
If I could just teleport as well as you can, Twilight, I'd have gotten us all here in a day or 2, not weeks. It's quite alright, TikTok.
Twilight smiled reassuringly.
Teleporting is quite a difficult art. That all these ponies are so talented with it is rather surprising. Then again, these ponies here are teleporting in organic matter, which is much, much easier. I'm sure you can at least do that. TikTok?
TikTok shook her head glumly.
It's not my forte at all. Seeing you and Starlight do it is one thing. Seeing others do it too is depressing.
Oh, cheer up, TikTok!
Pinkie chirped as she threw a plate for the unicorn behind her to catch before grabbing another tray.
Maybe if you want to teleport so badly, you should ask Twilight for lessons. She's feeling better now. I'm sure she'd be able to help you. Yes, that sounds like a fantastic idea.
Twilight beamed, patting TikTok on the shoulder.
When I'm back to full strength, of course. At this rate, I'll be my old self by morning.
And all it took was just a little bit of food to do it.
Rainbow grinned.
Shoot, if I'd known this was all it took, I would have been flying loops between Hope's Point and you from the start. Sure, that dull or brown junk isn't great, but hey, it's something.
There's more to it than just food, Rainbow,
Twilight said, shaking her head.
TikTok helped me out a great deal with my magic deficiency. Whatever happened when Starlight's magic and mine reacted, it fractured my ley lines, the technical term for magical conduits in a unicorn's horn.
She explained, seeing a few confused looks.
TikTok may not know restomancy outside of a simple diagnostic spell, but ley line fractures can't be repaired with plain restomancy anyway. It requires either time and rest without using magic, or very, very complicated restomancy spells that even I don't know. I don't know how she did it, but TikTok's magic seemed to have progressed the rate of recovery in my horn. That kind of damage should have taken weeks of no spellcasting to recover from, but here I can feel she's managed it in days.
TikTok sheepishly rubbed the back of her head.
It's a form of chronomancy. It's not like restomancy, because it doesn't heal wounds, but it speeds up the natural healing process. It's useless on major wounds, but excellent on things that just require time to heal. If applied properly, it can actually stop certain injuries from even progressing. I used it on Lockwood's wounds too. That's why he was able to stay in the condition it was in for so long, instead of getting worse. You were helping Lockwood too?
Fluttershy asked.
I thought you were just evaluating his condition all that time. Why didn't you tell us?
The hoof on the back of TikTok's head dropped away listlessly, and she looked down, frowning.
To be honest, I think you all had enough of listening to me go on about how much I knew, and then have it blow up in my face. I figured if I just kept my great gob shut and worked it in secret, perhaps it wouldn't be jinxed by my bloody, rotten luck.
That works good enough for me, Flathoof shrugged.
So, back to what we were discussing earlier.
Twilight interjected.
If you really want to learn teleport magic, TikTok, I'd be more than happy to teach you the fundamentals. It's dangerous stuff to attempt unsupervised in the learning stages, so I'll stick with you for the next few days until you get it down. I think you're smart and strong enough to handle it once we get that far.
TikTok's smile widened.
You'd really teach me? Of course.
Twilight grinned.
What are friends for?
TikTok was overwhelmed. Only one other pony had ever actually called her friend to her face before, and he was miles upon miles away. Without warning, she wrapped Twilight in a hug.
Thank you, Twilight. I didn't think I'd earn the privilege of being any pony's friend. Not with the way I've acted towards you and your friends.
Twilight blushed and pat TikTok on the head.
Hey now, you've done a lot for me, and for the rest of us as well, despite all the setbacks. You stood with me when I was at my weakest. If that's not friend material, I don't know what is. Even if you are a little insufferable at times. No offense.
Rainbow suddenly joined in.
Yeah, Twilight's right. To hell with what I said way back. You know what? TikTok stood by Twilight and tried to help her when she was down. Even if she messed up bad at first, she's still A-okay in my book. I've been trying to say that since the start.
Pinky scoffed.
Geez, about time you listen to me, Dashy.
I'll admit, Applejack added in between bites of her latest dish.
Maybe you're not so bad after all. I suppose we all do owe you a whole lot of thanks for looking after Twi like you did. And Lockwood, too. If you're all serious about that. So thank you, TikTok.
Yes, thank you, TikTok.
Fluttershy eagerly agreed, hugging the unicorn as well.
If what you say is true, you did more for Lockwood than any pony else could have. You saved his life.
Rarity happily came over behind Fluttershy and joined in. Then even Flathoof walked over and, to the surprise of the others, joined in the hug as well. Pinky, Rainbow, and Applejack, despite being on the other side of the table, hurriedly rushed over to add their own number to the grand display of affection. It was TikTok's turn to blush.
Now really, I can't take the credit for that. The spell is very finicky and requires a lot of effort. I was using it mostly on Twilight to speed her healing along. I only used it on Lockwood sparingly, since really keeping him sedated seemed to be doing him more good. And you helped with that too,
Fluttershy sniffed.
Oh, thank you.
Briarthorn, who had been intently watching the moment unfold carefully without a single word, had a genuine smile of soft appreciation as Fluttershy spoke. He rushed forward out of his absence in the conversation, just as the last syllable passed from Fluttershy's lips.
Well, all right. Tick to the talk, to the tickety-tockety tick-tock. Magic and spells, getting things done,
he announced in a bouncing rhythm. Unfurling his massive wingspan, he just barely brushed the tips of his primaries together as he bunched every pony together, pulling their natural drift towards the green unicorn into an immediately much tighter group hug. He squeezed himself particularly between the two unicorns in the middle of the hug, Twilight and Tick-Tock herself. They all remained rather awkwardly together for a moment or two, caught up in feeling good about Tick-Tock while having mixed feelings about Briarthorn joining in.
Hey now, get off.
Tick-Tock hastily began wiggling uncomfortably through the hug, pushing every pony clumsily away as her cheeks lit furiously red.
But blimey, you all get really mushy when you're feeling friendly.
The awkwardness was interrupted when the doors to the room opened again, letting Cookie Dough into the room with hot cocoa and another dozen staff members carrying large trays of food behind her. She coughed into her hoof and announced happily,
My dears, the main course is served.
End of part 1 of chapter 27.